Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. If you have been following the channel, then we have started with the theories of international relations, and today we are looking at another important school of thought, structural realism, also known as Neorealism. Here are some of the core claims of structural realism. For structural realists, it is the structure of or architecture of the international system that forces states to pursue power. In a system where there is no higher authority that sits above great powers, the states have little choice but to compete for power if they hope to survive. Structural realists treat states as if they were black boxes. They are assumed to be alike. Structural realist theorists ignore cultural differences among states as well as differences in regime type. Power is based on the material capabilities that a state controls. The balance of power is mainly a function of the substantial military assets that states possesses, such as armored divisions and nuclear weapons. Finally, a second kind of power is latent power, referring to socio-economic ingredients that go into building military power based on states' wealth and size of overall population. Within structural realism, two new theoretical sub-schools have emerged, and these both schools they have built out of the basic insights of structural realism. Defensive realism. Kenneth Walls is a staunch proponent of defensive realism. He wrote the book Theory of International Politics in 1979. Defensive realist maintains that it is unwise for states to try to maximize their share of world power because the system will punish them if they attempt to gain too much power. In other words, the pursuit of hegemony is considered unwise. Offensive realism. John Mearsheimer takes the opposite view. They maintain that it makes good strategic sense for states to gain as much power as possible if the circumstances are right to pursue hegemony. For them, having overwhelming power is the best way to ensure one's own survival. Now, in comparison to classical realists, for who power is an end in itself, structural realist argues power is a means to an end and the ultimate end is survival. Next, why do states compete among themselves for power? The answer to this question is based on 5 assumptions about the international system. The first one, great powers are the main actors in the world politics, and they, as mentioned earlier, operate in an anarchic system. It simply means that there is no central authority or ultimate arbiter that stands above states. Second assumption, all states possesses some offensive military capability. Each state has the power to inflict some harm to its neighbor, but obviously the capability varies among states and for any state it can change over time. Third, it is almost impossible to be certain about the intention of other states, whether other states are determined to use force or to alter the balance of power or they are satisfied enough with current situation. Unlike material capabilities, intentions cannot be empirically verified. Fourth assumption is that the main goal of states is survival. They can pursue other goals too, but those aims they take a back seat to survival. And finally, the fifth assumption is that states are rational actors, which means they are capable of coming up with sound strategies that maximize their prospects for survival. The structural imperative described above are reflected in the famous concept of security dilemma. This term was coined by John Hurst. The main essence of this dilemma is that most of the steps taken by a great power to enhance its own security decreases the security of other states. For example, any country that improves its own security in the global balance of power, it does so at the expense of other states, which lose relative power. So it is difficult to improve its prospects for survival without threatening the survival of other states. This paradox is referred to as the security dilemma. Next, disagreements between offensive realism and defensive realism. Now, offensive realists argue that states should always be looking for opportunities to gain more and more power and should do whatever seems feasible. States should maximize power, and their ultimate goal should be hegemony, the best way to guarantee survival. On the other hand, defensive realists they argue that states should not maximize power but should instead strive for an appropriate amount of power. This is a result of three factors. If any state becomes too powerful, then balancing will occur. In an offense-defense balance, usually the weight is on the defender's favor because any state that attempts to gain large amount of additional power is likely to end up fighting a series of losing war. Also, they argue that even when conquest is possible, it does not pay because the cost of war outweighs the benefits. But the offensive realists do not subscribe to the above arguments. They argue that balancing is often inefficient when forming coalition, and because of which threatened states sometimes opt for buck passing rather than joining the balancing coalition. This kind of behavior creates opportunities for aggression. Offensive realists find issue with the above claim of defensive realists that defender has significant advantage over the attacker. To this, they took the example of the US hegemony over the Western Hemisphere during the 19th century. Also, they took they find issue with the defensive realist claims that uh, conquest hardly pays, and also to this point, they pointed out that sometimes conquests do pay. Conquerors can exploit a vanquished state's economy for gain. Next, structural realism on causes of war. Structural realists recognize that states can go to war for any number of reasons. For example, enhancing security is one important reason how, but it is not the only reason. Ideology or economic considerations are sometimes paramount in a state's decision for war. For example, nationalism was the main reason why Bismarck launched wars against Denmark, Austria, and France. Um, and because of this, some realists they focus on the polarity of the system in examining the likelihood of war. Whether bipolarity or multipolarity is more stable has been a long debate. There are realists who think bipolarity is more stable, and they offer three supporting arguments. The first, there is more opportunity for great powers to fight each other in a multipolar world. Second, equality between great powers tends to be more even and balancing behavior is easier due to relative balance in terms of wealth and population, the building blocks for military power. Third, there is greater potential for miscalculation in multipolarity. Next, there are realists who also think that multipolarity is more stable, and because of this, they offer the following two supporting arguments. More great powers are better in part because deterrence is easier. In multipolarity, more states can join together to confront an aggressive state. Second point, there is less hostility among the great powers as their attention is more diffused. But it is seen that with the end of the Cold War and the collapse of Soviet Union, many realists argue that unipolarity has arrived. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you like it and share it. Subscribe to the channel for similar videos. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.